Hello, everyone, and thank you for signing up for our webinar today. It's How to Build a Greater Company, Evolving the Employee Experience. My name is Lindsay, and I'm on the Limeade marketing team. If you have any tech issues today, I'm here to help. Just reach out over the GoToWebinar platform. We have a jam-packed agenda, so in an effort to respect everyone's time, we'll kick it off right away. We have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. So it is a pleasure to introduce our thought leader today. Stephen Parker leads our stellar customer success team at Limeade. He brings over 20 years of experience as both an HR practitioner and subject matter expert in program design. He's passionate about employee well-being, and he's actually joining us today from sunny San Diego at the WELCOA Summit. So Stephen, please take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay, and thanks everybody for joining us. I'm really excited to be here, and in a second, I'm going to move to the next slide, but at the risk of being narcissistic, I just want to share a little bit about me. I am actually a former HR practitioner, I say recovering HR practitioner, and spent many, many years in talent management, benefits, and culture before moving to HR tech about 10 years ago. So why is that important? Well, it's important because I've been on a journey to help other organizations build great companies, and that's why you're here today. So I want to start off with the end in mind and kind of give you the answer. I'm going to talk about the state of work, then I'm going to talk about the evolution of HR's focus, and then finally I'm going to show you how you can break down some silos and build a great company in your organization, and then take any questions that you might have. So with that in mind, let's talk about how to build a greater company. It's really sort of a simple model, but it's easier said than done. So the only way, and this is through a lot of research and starting off with things like the service profit chain from the smart people at Harvard, up until most recently, research out of our own Limeade Institute shows that when you authentically invest in your people, they will authentically invest in your organization. So in order to build a great company, you have to really care about your employees. So like I said, easier said than done, right? Because most companies kind of lose sight of that. I think back to when I first started in benefits, for example. I thought my job was to help build a great environment where great people could accomplish great things. And then over the years, as healthcare started to get more complex, et cetera, really our focus shifted into cost containment. But here's the thing, you can't cost cut your way to a great company. You really have to think about how am I investing in my people and what's their experience with the organization in order to build a great company. So with that said, let's take a look at the environment that we're operating in and how people feel about their jobs in general. The reality is that most people don't love their jobs. For the past 10 years, the employee engagement scores from companies like Gallup haven't changed. In fact, 2/3 of employees are actually disengaged at work. If you think about your organization as a boat, bear with me for a second on this example, and you had 8 people in your boat, you'd have one person paddling as hard as they can to get you to your destination. That's the engaged person. You'd have 5 people kind of hanging out along for the ride, looking at the scenery. Those people are neither engaged nor actively disengaged. But then you'd have 2 people in the back of your boat actually trying to poke holes in the boat. That's how bad the problem with employee disengagement is in the workplace today. And it hasn't changed in the last 10 years. In fact, companies are spending a ton of money on this engagement problem. But really, most executives don't believe that those engagement initiatives are actually driving business outcomes. We spend almost $400 per employee just surveying employees and actually driving potentially more disengagement by not taking action on the back end of that. I wanted to look at some other data besides just the Gallup data, et cetera, to see really what was going on with the state of employee engagement. And so there was a great study published by Burson by Deloitte that took a look at Glassdoor data. And in fact, looked at the specific question on Glassdoor that says, would you recommend your company as a great place to work? And just like the engagement data hasn't changed for 10 years, the Glassdoor data, this data has been relatively the same for the past 3 years. There's almost no change in the data. The good news is, however, that there are some companies sort of at the top end of the results here who are doing it right. And so what are those companies doing? What's unique about those companies? Well, those companies are really putting employees first. The reality is that in order to really impact engagement, you have to think about the people that you're trying to engage and help them feel good and live with a sense of purpose. That's actually how we define well-being at Limeade. It's feeling good and living with a sense of purpose. You guys all know what this feels like. It's when you have that really deep connection with your work that creates extra energy and commitment. You're like totally engaged. You wake up in the morning, you're in the shower, you're thinking about how you can help your organization drive its purpose. You're thinking about how you can make a bigger impact, and it doesn't even really feel like work. Your brain's turbocharged, your heart's in it, and somehow you're energized. It affects everything you do when it works right. In fact, we know that, well-being is actually sort of the secret sauce to driving employee engagement. And why is that? Well, I think it's because people really think about their relationship with their organization, with their work, exactly the same way they think about their relationships with other people. So think about that for a second. We kind of want the same things from work that we want in our relationship with other people. We want to feel safe. We want to feel secure. We want to feel like we're growing, we're having fun, we're developing. Most of all, we want to know that you care about me as much as I care about you. And when that happens, when that commitment is there, things like engagement go up. In fact, when people are feeling good and living with purpose, they're 38% more engaged. They're twice as likely to enjoy their work and almost twice as likely to recommend your organization as a great place to work. So I want to give you an example of how that commitment can show up. This is actually Terry. Terry, she's talking about her organization as a partnership. She's talking about the fact that not only is she there to better the company, but they're there to better her and not just their bottom line. This is how it feels when there's that reciprocity in play. When people feel like they're treated as though they're valuable, they'll do anything to add value to your organization. So it's important for us when we think about the employee engagement to think about the experience that employees see in our organizations. How are people actually feeling when they come to work every day? The unfortunate news there is that when you think about it in those terms, the employee experience is really broken. Let's talk about the difference between the employee experience and employee engagement. So employee engagement, like I mentioned before, it's that sort of deep connection that people feel to their work, that sense of purpose that drives extra energy and commitment. So that's something that employees sort of have or they don't, and it comes from them, right? But organizations can foster employee engagement through the employee experience. The employee experience is the reality of what it's really like to work at your organization. It's what's sort of designed and created for employees. It's the intentional things that you do to help employees feel more engaged or not. And the reality is, it's a mess right now. So what do I mean by that? When we look at the research, and actually, Lindsay, if you could move the slide for me, my computer's not letting me move the slides anymore. So when we look at the research, Lindsay, can you move the slides?
We're on the research slide. I think there might be a delay on your end.
Awesome. Well, let's see. So Lindsay, I'm just going to tell you to move the slides because I can't see them moving, and I apologize for those of you who are participating on the webinar. It's a great hotel Wi-Fi in sunny San Diego. But when you look at the research on what the employee experience is like, it's actually 75% of companies are struggling with overwhelmed employees. You can see that employees have really a lot more information coming at them than ever before. Things like more access to cell phones, more, I don't know about you, but I get communications from email, from my Microsoft Teams, from social media, all kinds of different places. And it's just a mess. So when we think about that, we're actually kind of contributing to a negative employee experience. In HR, you know, in our different silos, we send out a lot of tools, a lot of information to employees, and people are overwhelmed with all the things they could do and don't have insight into the few things that maybe they should do. So how do we fix that? In order to have a really great employee experience, their experience should be immersive. What do I mean by that? It really starts with thinking about the person in the center. So when we think about the employee experience, the first thing we have to think about is the whole person. And we know that what happens in one aspect of someone's life impacts all the other things that are going on. So what do I mean by that? Well, my physical health can actually impact my productivity at work. If I'm struggling with pain or something like that, I'm not going to be as productive as I could be at work. My emotional health, if I'm fighting with my spouse or not getting along with my coworkers or feel stressed out, I'm not going to have a great employee experience. My financial health, if I can't afford to feed my kids, it's going to be hard for me to really think about the purpose that I have at work and bring my whole self to work. Even my work well-being impacts the employee experience. So, you know, does my manager support me in my own personal well-being, or are leaders out there talking about how important it is for me to have a great experience? All of these things impact the employee experience. But it's not just the individual, and a lot of organizations stop with just the individual. It's also how the company supports the employee experience. Things like your physical environment, things like how your tools and technology are actually supporting employees or not. Things like leaders and managers, like I mentioned. Think about those of you who have like a call center, for example. We know scientifically that call center employees are more productive when they take 2 or 3 minutes out of every hour to do some sort of physical activity. But how many managers would lose their minds if employees started to stand up every hour and get off the phones? So it's really important to think about how your company is or not supporting the employee experience as well. And then finally, you've got to look at the whole ecosystem of tools and resources that you have out there and think about the things like how technology is helping or hindering that employee experience. All right, so speaking of technology, technology can really help bring the employee experience to life, or it can actually help create a really disengaging employee experience, as I mentioned before. So when you're able to integrate seamlessly things like well-being, engagement, social recognition, inclusion, diversity, even performance management, learning, etc., when you're able to integrate those into one seamless experience, and when you're able to start with the employee first, the employee in mind, you're able to create a really positive experience for them. When you're not, when you're just kind of cobbling things together and you're operating in silos, you can actually disengage employees and make their work harder. So I've been in HR technology for about 10 years now, as I mentioned, and I've seen this evolution of HR technology and how we're thinking about employees with that technology. And I want to talk about that for a second. So really, the first HR technology was designed for HR. We started off with core HR, manager self-service, payroll, etc., so that we could get a handle on our human resources and better manage them, do the things that we were asked to do as a function. And it was really HR-centric. It was stuff that was designed for us, that we pushed out to people, and maybe people used it, but they did it because they had to, not because they wanted to. Then the second wave of HR came, it was talent management. And actually, a lot like the employee experience wave, the talent management technology actually brought functions together. Functions like recruiting, performance management, learning and development, but still the technology itself was looking to give something more to the organization than to people. It was more organizational centric. So if you think about that, performance management is a great example. Unless I have Michael J. Fox in a DeLorean, I can't go back to the future and change my performance just because I filled out a performance review every year. But the organization does get some information on that and then can sort of manage me in aggregate. Here's the thing though, people don't really want to be managed. So now this new wave of technology is actually more focused on the end user and helping them be better. Things like I mentioned before, well-being, things like recognition, etc., are all focused on how do I help this person bring their best self to work. And I think if you think about your programs and your technology, maybe ask yourself this question. If I stopped giving that technology to people in my organization, would they go out and purchase an individual license because they feel like it really is worth their time and their money and helps them be better at work? Or would they sort of run up and down the hallways screaming, thank God the witch is dead, because you've made them not have to use that technology anymore? So if you think about how technology can or cannot improve your employee experience, the question I like to ask myself is this helping employees? And think about the power of that. If you said, you know, I'm not really just a compensation function. I'm here to help employees see their value in the organization. I'm not really just a benefits function. I'm here to help employees feel good and live with purpose. That's when you can start really improving the employee experience. All right. So, you know, Josh Burson from Burson by Deloitte, I mentioned, shared a lot of research about the employee experience, and it's a good place to go look to see some of the details in some of these areas that I'm talking about. But really, when he mentions the research, he talks about how hard this is for organizations to do, because what we have to do is be able to operate differently as functions. We have to be able to start bringing this all together across our functions. And frankly, a lot of our functions have different goals and that sort of thing. So it is really analogous to what happened in talent management back in the day. What we need to do is create a unified experience for employees that crosses functions with one clear message. And that message is that we care. And when you do that, like I mentioned before at the beginning of this webinar, employees are 38% more likely to be engaged. So that's a lot. Let's get into the details. First, I want to check with you. I want to see where you're at. And Lindsay's going to help us bring up a poll. So the question is, do you have a coordinated set of people programs that crosses functions, that brings your HR silos together and puts employees first in order to bring your culture to life? Your choices are not even close. Programs talk to each other, really, but that's about it. Or our programs and functions, we strategize and execute together. Or finally, yeah, we totally got this. We're winning all the awards. I'm not even sure why I joined your webinar today.
So it looks like half the audience has responded. Let's give it a couple more minutes and get a couple more votes in. They're trickling in, and I'm going to close the polls now at 70%. And the winner is B, programs and functions talk to each other, but that's about it, coming in at 61%.
Awesome. And that makes a ton of sense. Programs talk to each other, but that's about it. It's like I said, it's really hard for us to work cross-functionally in so many different areas of the employee experience and bring all that together. It makes sense that people are there. The good news is that not even close didn't come out as the leader. So let's go to the next slide. At Limeade, our Limeade Institute, which is a team of organizational psychologists and scientists who really think about the employee experience every day, we've developed something we call the employee experience maturity model to help organizations, to help people like you actually navigate your way to that D answer. We've got this, we're killing it, we're winning awards. I want to first orient you to the model. So the model has 4 levels of the employee experience. And with each level, we see from left to right, we see really more value for the organization. We also see the effort that the organization has to put in order to kind of go from left to right, from level 1 to level 4, is actually a bell curve. So kind of complicated to think about, but it's actually harder to go from really traditional siloed approach to start where most of you are at today, to be coordinated and connected, than it is to have a fully immersive experience in level 4, where everyone in your organization is thinking about the employee experience, and positive things happen in the employee experience just naturally because it's who you are. When you get to that point, it's a lot less work for you, but it's hard to do. It's hard to get there, obviously. So let's take each one of these levels one by one. So the first level is the traditional siloed approach. In this level, this is where people feel like HR programs are coming at them, and it's something that the company wants to do for themselves, not for the employee. Employees can sort of sense that. I mentioned that people think about their relationship with their company the same way they think about their relationship with other people. Well, let's take some examples of that and highlight how level 1 might feel to an employee. Let's take well-being, for example. So imagine if I were to come home to my spouse after my trip in San Diego and say, honey, I noticed on our Fitbit app that your BMI is out of range. But that's okay, because if you just do these 2 or 3 things, which I think are a reasonable alternative to having healthy BMI, you'll be okay. But if you don't do those things, hon, I'm going to need you to contribute a little bit more to the bills every month because you're costing me more money. Imagine how my wife would feel about me if I said that when I got home. She'd think I was a jerk, right? Probably a lot of you on this webinar are saying, wow, would he really say that? What a jerk. But that's what we do to our employees in level 1. Think about things like diversity and inclusion. In level 1, we're maybe sending out a survey to managers or some training to tell them, hey, we want you to be more diverse. Same thing. Imagine if I went home to my wife and said, hey, hon, I'm worried that you might make a bad decision at some point this year. So I want you to watch this video that I think will help you make better decisions. And that way, if you do make the bad decisions, I can tell all of our friends that I told you not to do that. Again, she'd think I was a jerk, right? But in level 1, that's what most of our organizations are doing to our employees. Many of these initiatives actually erode trust, and despite the best intentions, can decrease employee engagement. So good news that most of you aren't there. Let's talk about level 2, where most of you are. So this is the coordinated and connected level. This is when, like most of you, organizations start to talk to each other and say, you know, we really want to put the employee first. We want a more positive experience. We want people to feel like the things that are coming at them in the experience are for them, not done to them. And so as a result, we start to see that level of commitment go up. But this is a lot of hard work. This is maybe the hardest level to be at, because while you're focusing on the individual experience, that whole person, at this level, we haven't quite gotten to the place where the whole company is aligned around your efforts, right? That's like that example that I gave about the call center, where, you know, maybe you're pushing out a great employee experience program to the employees, but there might be organizational things that get in the way from actually seeing those things come to fruition. So when you look at things like employee engagement, for example, think about your employee engagement efforts in your organization. Think about how you actually take action on those things. If you're like me, when I was an HR practitioner, we spent a ton of money and a ton of time, 100 different questions. Our results would come back in about 2 months' time from our consultants. And then we'd share them with leaders, and leaders would say, well, what does that really mean? So we conduct a ton of focus groups and surveys to figure out what employees were trying to tell us in the survey we already conducted. And then we come back to leaders and we'd say, well, it looks like we just need to communicate better, right? Well, the problem with that is if we managers knew how to make employees feel connected to their work, they'd already be doing them and our engagement scores would be great. So at level 2, while we have the best intentions, we actually sometimes lose that sense of action, the ability to actually do something about the programs, to actually make them more valuable. And again, employees can start to feel disengaged because, well, you had good intentions, but there's nothing coming out of it. So that's where level 3 comes in. That's where organizations start to actually make the sense of having a great employee experience and driving really awesome employee engagement kind of everybody's job. And so here in this level, the work actually goes down for people like you because you've got managers and leaders aligned, your physical environment, your tools and resources are all there to focus on and support the employee experience. You have an integrated real-time approach at multiple company levels that are focused on helping the employee. So here's some examples in well-being, engagement, reward and recognition, diversity and inclusion. But really, I want to take you through how to do this. And so this is when we stop just focusing on the individual and we start focusing on that whole company idea. And our team of research scientists at the Limeade Institute have created a model for this, actually. It's called our organizational support model. And so you can kind of use this as a scorecard for your organization. Think about, as I talk through these different elements, think about where you'd score yourself really high and maybe the 1 or 2 areas where you'd score yourself the lowest. So to orient you to this model, there are 8 different things that are impacting the employee experience in this organizational support model. There are 4 of them that are sort of at the organization-wide level, and there are 4 of them that are at the sort of local level for employees. So let's talk about each one of those as a group. So first, local support. In this group is actually the #1 enabler or disabler of the employee experience, and that's the manager. Most of you probably already figured that out. An employee's direct supervisor can be the biggest influencer or obstacle in improving the employee experience. So if you want to get to level 3, think about how you reward managers. I've thought about this problem for a long time. Nobody wakes up in the morning to be evil unless they're a supervillain and they have a cape and a mask and all that jazz. So why do managers actually disable the employee experience? It's because we reward them in ways that actually encourage them to break the employee experience. Think of things like, budget and cost containment and, productivity metrics at the call center or on the manufacturing line. We need to help managers see that actually when they're doing those things, they're actually shooting themselves in the foot in terms of productivity, because when people have a broken employee experience, when people feel like you're taking more than you're giving to them, then they'll decide to stop putting that extra energy. That commitment will go down and you'll get the bare minimum amount of productivity for them. People are smart. They can figure out, like, how much can I give to work to just get by and not get fired? We also look at social networks. Social networks is huge in today's work environment. How do we connect people across a disparate environment, across disparate locations, with each other in ways that help them help each other have a positive experience? So not just things like mentor-mentee programs, but think about it. If I'm struggling with how to do a particular aspect of my job, how do I connect with people and ask for help? If I'm struggling outside of work with stress, how do I connect with other people who have sort of figured that out, et cetera? And then your teams and peers in your physical work environment. This is one that a lot of people forget about. So maybe I'm a nurse and my job is to take care of patients. And we know that in order for her to feel really connected to her mission of taking care of patients, we need to take care of her first. But the way we set up her rounds is she has to go from patient to patient and she never gets to eat. She never gets to take time out to de-stress. All of a sudden, her personal well-being is at stake. It's impossible for her to give a great experience to her patients. So if you think about your physical work environment, how does that actually impact the employee experience? And what things can you do in your cafeterias, with meeting space, et cetera, to actually drive a more positive employee experience? So that's the local support. Then over that is organizational-wide support. These are how we really help people connect to the purpose of the organization. Is there strategic alignment? Is there a direct connection between your business strategy, your people strategy, and initiatives? Are you stopping and saying, instead of being sort of functionally focused, like how do I manage the benefits function better? How do I reduce our costs? Are you putting the employee experience first as an organization? Are you working together to say, hey, what we'd actually like to see is people feeling better about their work? So those of you who are focused on engagement, those of you who are focused on inclusion, those of you who are focused on recognition, let's all sit down and have the same goal and create some strategic alignment. Are leaders talking the talk in employee experience? Do they believe that authentically investing in employees is the best way to build a great company? Or are they still thinking of employees as assets to be sort of moved around and managed? How does your culture help drive a great employee experience? And then last but not least, I mentioned this a few times, how do all the tools and resources that you provide give a great employee experience? How do you focus all the tools and resources so it doesn't feel like a deluge of things coming at an employee, but actually feels like something that's enabling that employee? So level 3 is, like I mentioned, where we start to see a lot of this become sort of a grassroots thing. And when you combine the focus on the employee with high organizational support, your numbers start to go up in every category of people influence. So I thought this number was actually, it couldn't be right? 99%, that's way too high. 99% of people who have high well-being and feel organizational support will recommend their company as a great place to work. 91% of employees who have both those things say they're going to stay in an organization. So huge benefit from level 3. All right, so let's talk about nirvana. Level 4. This is where the commitment is the highest between the organization and the employee, and actually the investment that the company has to make decreases because people like managers and leaders are taking up the employee experience torch. So how do you get there? Well, when you're at level 4, this is when all of your programs feel immersive. They consider the whole person. They consider the whole company. They consider your whole ecosystem across all of your programs. And employees can say things like, I feel good and live with purpose. I have a deep connection with the work, and I'm willing to give out more energy and more commitment. I can bring my whole self to work, and I know that it's valued. Big difference. That last piece is so important. I see a lot of, for example, diversity and inclusion efforts that say, well, we want to hire people who are more diverse. And you bring in people who are, diverse in thought and maybe diverse in culture, and then you stick them in an environment that actually doesn't support that, and they feel like they're out of place. And they come in really highly engaged, and they leave very quickly. So if you have a problem with things like first-year turnover, et cetera, maybe it's because your organization isn't aligned around the employee experience. And if you want to think about how to get here, you start with the employee experience in mind, and you ask them, what are the things that are getting in your way from feeling good and having a sense of purpose? What are the things that are getting in your way of being able to say these things on this slide? And when you've done it really well, people understand putting the employee first is how we do things around here. So is all of this just like fluffy white clouds? Like, yeah, I get it. We know we should care about the employees, but I'm going to go talk to my CFO and they're going to tell me manage my budget better. They're going to tell me to go cut benefits costs. They're going to tell me I need to find those employees who aren't healthy and put them in a disease management program. They're going to tell me I actually need to stop measuring engagement so often because it costs a lot of money and we're not seeing a lot of value out of it. The reality is companies who put the employee first companies who have built great organizations outperform those organizations who don't significantly. Over the past 15 years, the stock price of Fortune's best companies to work for has grown 584%. So that's the impact we can have by helping to drive an awesome employee experience. That's the impact that we can talk to our CFO about why we need to invest more in things like tools and resources to help bring the employee experience together. So it's hard, I get it. You know, when we have a really awesome employee experience, we see great results, but it's hard to get there. And so in order to really focus on this, I think you can start off with just a couple of key points. First, really think about your people as a whole person. Think about their physical, their emotional, their financial state, what's going on with them at work. Listen to the employees. Second is make sure that your programs are inspiring mutual trust and commitment. Make sure they feel like things that you're doing for people and not to people. Like those couple of examples I gave where my wife would divorce me if I came home and acted that way to her. Like, think about that. How are you treating your people? And would you treat your partner that way? And then finally, consider a fully immersive employee experience. Get together as functions. Bring in the people in employee communications. Bring in the people who care about your employee engagement survey. Bring in the people in learning and development. Bring in the people who run your well-being programs. And think about the strategy, the things that you want to achieve together. And when you do this, when you authentically invest in your people, they will invest more in you. That drives higher employee engagement and helps you build a great company. Now, I know it's not easy to do all this stuff. We actually have a term for people like you in Limeade, and that is changemaker. Because we know it's hard with all the pressures that we have to, you know, just manage our functions and control costs and all of those things. It's hard to reach out to other functions and say, you know what, we should be doing this differently. We should be thinking about where we're at in that employee experience model and be looking at how we can move to the next level. So if you're ready to be a change maker, we invite you to kind of join the community here, hear from other customers, people like you who are going through the same thing. And actually, feel free to ask questions right now, because in about 2 minutes, I'm going to start taking your questions to help you understand how you can bring this to life in your organization. At Limeade, we work hard on this every day. We're lucky enough to drink our own champagne around the employee experience and put employees first. And as a result, we've won a bunch of best places to work awards over the last several years. So we're happy to help you with this problem. We're also happy to introduce you to other organizations who have built a great company. And last but not least, if you just say, you know what, I'd rather kind of explore on my own, you can learn more at limeade.com. We actually have a white paper that goes into detail on all of these points. Or you can just follow me at Stephen J. Parker on Twitter. I tend to tweet out a lot of different examples of how you can be a change maker and help drive an awesome employee experience. All right, with that, I'm going to start actually taking your questions. And so, Lindsay, what questions have we gotten so far?
Okay, they are slowly trickling in, but we do have one here. It's a long one, so bear with me. It's clear that to advance the employee experience, I'll need to work with others. Any recommendations for how your clients have gone about this, and how do you get that C-suite buy-in? Yeah,
really great question, and it's a loaded one. There's a lot of different things about that question. So the first part is we got to make the business case, and we got to make it not just from a bottom line perspective, but I didn't mention this in the meat of the content, but actually bringing all these programs and functions together can help you reduce costs of these functions. So if you think about all the duplicit work in the different functions that I mentioned, like well-being and employee engagement, et cetera, if you consolidate those functions and work together and sort of focus on one employee experience, you can cut out a lot of costs. So that's one way to kind of talk about it. But more importantly, I think you talk about sort of the top line opportunities. So when I think about how we measure the employee experience, I think about people and tying it to people and business results like turnover. We know that turnover has a huge impact on business continuity as well as the cost to actually replace folks. So at Limeade, we help our customers measure, the fact that, hey, people who are having a great employee experience are less likely to turn over. Here's some people who aren't having a great employee experience. Let's go fix that. And they get a lot of leadership buy-in just by the fact that they can reduce that turnover level. We also look at employee engagement scores and tying them to business outcomes. So I mentioned that nurse example. One of the ways that you can help people think about the employee experience in healthcare is by tying that directly to patient care satisfaction or HCAHPS scores, and take that into retail. Maybe it's tying it to same-store sales or your customer experience. I mentioned the service profit chain at the beginning of this webinar. You go check out that research, because what they basically did is they started off with, well, how does the organization increase shareholder value? And they looked at things like, cost control or developing better products, et cetera. But none of those things really mattered. The one thing that mattered was this concept called customer loyalty. And that's not just customer satisfaction, but it's customers care so much about their experience, have had such a good experience that they'll come back over and over again. Apple's a good example of that. If Apple built a car, there are a ton of people who would go out tomorrow and buy that car just because it's coming from Apple. But Apple's never ever built a car before, and people should avoid it like the plague if they're using sort of rational thought. But Apple has such deep customer loyalty that people will go buy that car. How does that happen? They said, how do people feel this sense of loyalty to a brand or to a company? And they looked at all of the different ways that might be. Again, is it awesome products? Is it, best price, et cetera? None of those things mattered. It was engaged employees. So if you just track back your key business metrics, the things that your company cares about, and you can illustrate for them how the current employee experience is or isn't enabling those key metrics, you can also use a lot of the research from Limeade and some of our customers who have achieved these higher levels of maturity in the employee experience model to say, we could be better. All right, more
Great
questions.
answer. Our next question. Senior leadership at my company is very military. I feel a grassroots approach is the only way to introduce a new approach, but concerned my group's changes will be squashed by the existing culture. Suggestions?
Yeah, say that again. I got stuck in the military. I started having a flashback myself because I actually, before I got into HR, I spent 6 years in special operations. So I get a militaristic environment. What was the second half of the question, Lindsay?
That is, he feels that the grassroots approach is the only way to introduce new things, but he's concerned that groups will challenge this and they'll get squashed by the existing culture at play. What are your suggestions for him?
Yeah. Wow, that's a tough question. I think, the first thing that we have to do is, grassroots is important, but it's important for top down to exist too. So I don't want to rehash what I just said, but if you really start by tying the things that leaders care about in that militaristic environment to what's going on with the employee, like you can get some top down push. Even if you don't get it everywhere, if you just get a couple of leaders to kind of go with you, you can try different things in those leaders' organization and then use that as a proof point to drive it through the organization. Now that said, how do you get that bottom up stuff to actually trickle up in a way that people want to sustain it, et cetera? I think look for, to take the militaristic approach, we used to call it little groups of paratroopers in the military. So look for 5 or 6 people who really care about that thing in the employee experience, and figure out what you can do to enable them to do the things to kind of flip the switches on the things that matter most, so that when they do those things, they feel supported in a way from each other and from HR that helps enable them. And then measure the results of those things that happen and expand a little bit after that. Always say, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So you don't have to start by saying, how am I going to make this go through the entire organization tomorrow? But start enabling pockets of it. Start bringing people together who do care about these things. Start finding employees who want to kind of take the initiative on their own ideas and enable them, and watch it expand.
Great. Our next question is, Stephen, how do you get a baseline to start generating the analytics?
Another great question. I think about, how do you get a baseline? You really got to ask employees. And I think that's why you see a lot more employee listening coming to the forefront in technology and tools. You can't, a lot of previous efforts in HR are sort of like once a year, top-down things, like, here, answer all these questions, and then we'll figure out what to do. The problem with that is that might not be what's on the employee's mind, and it's only sort of one point in time. The evolution of HR functions has been about managing sort of the day-to-day employee experience, and it's already started in places like performance management, where we realized, just managing performance once a year was ridiculous. So why do we do that with engagement surveys? Why do we do that with well-being? Why do we do that with diversity and inclusion? It's because we don't have the tools to help us scale. So I think in order to get a baseline, you've got to talk to employees. And I think technology obviously can help with that, because we don't have 200 HR practitioners who can go out and talk to employees every day. So we need to be able to use technology to help paint a picture of what's really going on for employees out there. And it can be as simple as asking them a few questions every day, like, how are you feeling? What's getting in your way?
Great. Thank you, Stephen. We promised a 45-minute webinar, so we're 2 minutes over. So I think that could be a last great question for us to end our webinar today.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for attending. Apologies for the initial technical difficulties, but we worked through them, and I appreciate the conversation and look forward to, if you want to continue the conversation, you can reach out to me, like I said, at Stephen J. Parker on Twitter, or just email me, steve.parker@limeade.com, and I'm happy to take your questions and help you through your journey on the employee experience. Thanks, everyone.